Eyes of Wakanda is a miniseries taking place from 1260 BC to 1886 AD that all leads on to the events that circumstate within the MCU's sacred timeline, building upon the suspense and stakes that are all leading on to the end. Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Josh, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of the Eyes of Wakanda miniseries. Now on Disney Plus, do you like it, do you not like it, or is it somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to see if you're going to watch the series or not, and taking it right in a positive, this is a series that bleeds on the cultural and design that you often get from the Black Panther series. Ryan Coogler is involved. He's not the writer or director to what this animated series is, but there still is an ambiance to the nature. It expels the cultural design that he exploits within the original Black Panther films themselves, and this does take place within the MCU sacred timeline, so it does give some points to the design, what the impact is going forward with the MCU. There's not a huge showcase where it's absolutely necessary to know how different designs connect as a whole. I don't know if these pieces of media will be utilized to impact what we'll be seeing at the end of the Doomsday and the Avengers films as a whole, but it still does lay in a heavy burden to be able to enjoy this lighthearted note, to enjoy these different episodic ideas that take place in less than 30 minutes, and to tackle them in a quick manner, be able to showcase events throughout time, including plagiarize some ideas within the showcase of Odysseus, some within China, which showcases an episode with a surprise hero that we haven't seen in the MCU before within episode 3. That's a true treat to be had, that I was happy to be seeing that, and albeit the animation is beautiful within the nature, it was inspired by African American paintings, so I do love how they portray that within the animation, which they really exploit some great characters throughout, just the design of what you're doing with the different mini events that you're following throughout. There's something that has a loose connection throughout all the episodes, especially when you get to the end, and there's a different multiversal connection that, of course, taking place within the multiversal sort of timeline, this saga of the MCU right now, that does, of course, pay in a heavy impact, something we may not see in the future directly to these characters specifically within live action, but something that, even though it's not heavy-handed in the necessary means to watch this show for what it is, you're still getting some clever wits to how you're pulling off some ideas and real stories of the past, the Trojan horse, everything that's going on with that, some things with Odysseus and Achilles, and just things we're pulling on throughout the film as a whole. I really love the integration of all these cultural events that are occurring within there, and each of their connections to Wakanda, to how these Wakandas are going on to the missions to retrieve different artifacts that contain the different parts of the vibranium that they include within their ideas. So I love the atmosphere that it's all going for within the painting animation that has going for it. Taking it into the mix elements, I feel like they could have advertised this much more if this was to be part of the sacred timeline. It was advertised to be releasing later in the month of August of 2025, but it ended up jumping the ship, coming out early, and it was not necessarily on my radar automatically, even as someone that really is following along with the release schedule. So it's a poorly done sort of thing. And if you really want to track what all the main events of the MCU are taking place, this is something that you still need to be putting on your radar, watching to be able to enjoy. But also in other realms of things, there's certain ideas about this show that didn't necessarily pay a heavy impact on me. I don't fully grasp what they're all trying to specifically express with all these stories going forward. Of course, I get the general gist of what they're sort of asking for you to receive from it. These 4 different events led to a different thing that takes place with a multiversal aspect that is going on within the 4th episode of what you're seeing within the series. The impacts that the choices we make, the different decisions and actions that are taking place can lead on to big turn of events and drastic changes within the stakes that could lead on to a devastational war that is shown within some of the series. And so that becomes the intriguing part, but there's ultimately still something that doesn't feel like you're relating to the characters in all the right ways, because once this short episode is done, you're just moving on to the next, and while there's a loose connection at the very end within the final episode to how you're foreshadowing and foreseeing what connections are seen through different visions that they see within the 4th episode, there's just something that ultimately doesn't necessarily take a big impact to the effect, to these emotionals that could be doing a bigger service to what it is impacting me with. Because while there is some certain deaths and certain ideas within the damage that is done to these main characters, I'm not necessarily connecting to how they're portraying the main character to the short amount of time that you're given to relate. And so I feel like there could have been a grander connection between these 4 episodes, show the positive correlation between what it's ultimately leading on to, that would show us fully what we're ultimately supposed to attach to specifically. Because while there is a generality to seeing the showcase of Wakanda throughout time, which is appealing to see at the very least, it's not something that ultimately shows the grand reveal of what comes from the 1st episode that pays into the effect of the final episode, and so on and so forth between each connection to each episode. While there is an impact that you can see the appeal for within the series as a whole, it may not heavily impact the full stakes that are all leading on within the MCU. And taking it into negatives, there's points in the choreography of animation that didn't fully line up, didn't fully feel fleshed out within the realism that you could have been portraying within the stakes as a whole. Of course, MCU can sometimes be known to suspend your disbelief to show the survival of these characters, but there's random points within the show where people jump off tall structures or are able to fight each other swinging across tapestries, and the way that all goes on and being able to show their full force against each other, I feel there could have been better ways to portray that fight in a more realistic manner, not utilize those sort of impactful elements, because it otherwise doesn't showcase a big shock value or a big element of surprise to be able to fight out like that, which shows an unrealistic portrayal in the fight choreography. And there's just other things with just my connection to the show as a whole that it could unfortunately become one of those forgettable shows that, because I didn't necessarily get anything fully impacted from this show, there's some nice cameos, some treats to be had spread along the way, some Easter eggs that could lead on to what the past we have seen from the Black Panther films we have witnessed. This also separates itself from the previous 2 Black Panther films because it doesn't have the texture that Ryan Coogler has appealed within his past 2 Black Panther films. And I've heard there's been some good rumors about what's coming forward within Black Panther 3, and this doesn't necessarily feel like it fully embraces the cultural design that Ryan Coogler normally does, and while he's a producer to this show, that doesn't fully correlate with the design of storytelling, what is all coming out of it. It doesn't feel like it's distanced from being of good quality and of good taste for what you're taking out of the artwork as a whole, but it ultimately may still be passable in the surmountable means that if you aren't necessarily interested within the show to begin with and don't care about completing every single ounce of the MCU Sacred Timeline filmography, this is one that could be passable, unfortunately, just by the means that I don't know how relevant it could become in the future, despite having some of that connection, some of those means to an end for where it ultimately relates to within the MCU itself. So that's just my personal thoughts on the Eyes of Wakanda miniseries, which I have to rate as simply 6.5 out of 10. Let me know down in the comments below what you thought of the Eyes of Wakanda miniseries. Is it good? Is it bad? Or somewhere right in the middle? Or if you're waiting for this review to see if you're going to see it or not, let me know down in the comments below all of that, and make sure to like this video if you enjoy it, subscribe if you haven't already to join in film culture community where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.